Good morning, friends. Remember, I told you I was going to be out today. Today, we are going to be analyzing poetry. Oop, I keep going on the wrong slide. Analyzing poetry. We're going to look at pages 42, 43, 44, 45 of Love That Dog. And we're going to analyze a piece of poetry called Love That Boy. I need you to please have out your Love That Dog book and your workbook. If you do not have those things out, please go ahead and get them out now. You can push pause if you need to. Let's look at our two clear learning targets. The first one is I can identify the characteristics of poetry in the first stanza of Love That Boy, and I can describe how Jack's feelings about poetry have changed using evidence or proof from the text. So let's go ahead and read pages 42 through 45. If you need to push pause to get ready, you can. Page 42, March 14th. That was the best poem you read yesterday by Mr. Walter Dean Myers. The best poem ever. I'm sorry I took the book home without asking. I only got one spot on it. That's why the page is torn. I tried to get the spot out. Page 43. I copied that best poem and hung it on my bedroom wall, right over my bed where I can see it when I'm lying down. Maybe you could copy it too and hang it on the wall in our class where we can see it when we are sitting at our desks doing stuff. Page 44. I sure liked the poem by Mr. Walter Dean Myers called Love That Boy. Because of two reasons I liked it. One is because my dad calls me in the morning just like that. He calls me, "Hey there, son." And also because when I had my yellow dog, I loved that dog and I would call him, page 45, like this. I'd say, "Hey there, Sky." His name was Sky. So let's talk about what is happening on these pages. Jack reads a poem called Love That Boy, and he takes home the book without permission to copy the poem. Now let's think about how Jack is feeling. He has two different emotions during this part of the book. The first emotion is excited, and the second emotion is scared. Jack really likes the poem, but he's ashamed because he took the book without asking and he spilled something on the pages. Now let's go over how we know it. We have to use evidence from the text to support our answer. So we're looking for evidence that supports excited, and then we're also looking for evidence that supports ashamed. Turn to page 42 in Love That Dog and see if you can find the excited and the ashamed feelings. On page 42, in line 1 and 2, it says that was the best poem. That shows that Jack is really excited. But in the second stanza, it says, I'm sorry I took the book home without asking. That shows he's ashamed. He writes, that was the best poem you read yesterday by Mr. Walter Dean Myers. Again, supporting the excited feeling. But he also wrote, I am sorry I took the book home without asking. I only got one spot on it. And that supports the idea that Jack feels ashamed. We're going to analyze some poetry from Love That Boy. This is in the weird part of the book that doesn't have page numbers. If you can find the apple poem from Friday, then if you turn one more page, it's Love That Boy. Push pause while you're trying to find that. So today we're going to read Love That Boy. Now, if you notice, this is only the first stanza. There are several stanzas in this, and we will get to listen to all of them. We're actually going to listen to other students reading the poem. But we're going to look at the first stanza together. Let's read it. Love That Boy by Walter Dean Myers. Love that boy, excuse me, like a rabbit loves to run. I said, I love that boy like a rabbit loves to run. Love to call him in the morning. Love to call him, hey there, son. So now we're going to listen to a class of students about your age that are going to read the entire poem. I hope you enjoy it. Awesome. All right, let's zip out of this, back to this. Let's talk about the things that we notice. What do you notice about the structure? Do you see lines and stanzas? Does it use any imagery? I see imagery when it talks about a rabbit loves to run. In my head, I can see a rabbit running across a field really fast. Is there any rhyme? No, there's not any rhyme here, but there's definitely some meter. You can feel the beat of the poem. There's definitely repetition because love that boy is repeated. Like a rabbit loves to run, love to call him. All of those are repeated. So, did we identify some of the characteristics of poetry in the first stanza of Love That Boy? Rate yourself with a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down. So on Tuesday, when I get back, we're going to be preparing for a text-based discussion. We've been working on this for a couple of days now. You are going to use your note catcher on page 26 to help you with our discussions. The question that we're focusing on today is how have Jack's feelings about poetry changed from the beginning of Love That Dog to where we are now in the story on page 45? And why have they changed? If you need to push pause to get to page 26, you may do that now. Make sure your name and date are at the top. Push play when you're ready. Today we're going to be looking at evidence. Evidence is the proof. We're also going to focus on elaboration. That means putting it in our own words and telling a little bit more about it. So let's focus on this first question. How did Jack feel about the poetry in the beginning of the story, and how do you know? Well, at the very beginning of the story, the evidence or the proof is I don't want to because boys don't write poetry, which is found on page 1. Push pause while you write this in your chart. Putting that in our own words is this tells us that Jack doesn't want to write poetry because he thinks that boys don't write poetry. Push pause when you to write this down in your workbook and push play when you're ready. Jack also says, can't do it, brain's empty on page 2. Push pause to write this down in your notebook. Push play when you're ready. This tells us that Jack wasn't able to write poetry because he didn't have any ideas. Push pause while you're writing this on page 26 of your workbook. Push play when you're ready. The next question we're going to focus on is how does Jack feel about poetry now, and how do you know? The first piece of evidence was what he said when he said that was the best poem you read yesterday by Mr. Walter Dean Myers. Push pause while you write this on page 26. Push play when you're ready. This tells us that Jack enjoys reading poetry now and that poetry has started to inspire him. Push pause while you're writing this in your notebook. Push play when you're ready to move on. Another piece of evidence is my brain was popping when I was looking at those poems. Push pause while you're writing this in your notebook. Push play when you're ready to move on. This tells us that Jack is now inspired to write poetry compared to the beginning of the book where his brain was empty. Push pause while you're writing this in your notebook. Push play when you're ready to move on. The last question we're going to focus on is what caused the change and how do you know? I liked those small poems we read today. It's a piece of evidence from the text. Push pause while you're writing this in your notebook. Push play when you're ready to move on. The elaboration is that this was the first time that Jack admitted he liked some poems. These poems were about pets and reminded him of his yellow dog. So it seems that realizing he could read and write poems about things he liked is what changed his mind. Push pause while you're writing this in your notebook. Push play when you're ready to move on. They look nice typed up like that on blue paper on a yellow board is another piece of evidence that shows the change. Push pause while you're writing this in your notebook. Push play when you're ready to move on. The elaboration of this was that this was the first time Jack saw his poems posted on the board, and he was proud of his work, which may have inspired him to continue writing poetry. Push pause while you're writing this in your notebook. Push play when you're ready to move on. I can describe how Jack's feelings about poetry changed using evidence from the text. Did we talk about Jack's feelings and how they've changed from the beginning of the book until now? Did we show text evidence? Did we elaborate and put some of it in our own words? I believe we've met this clear learning target. Guys, thank you so much for working hard for me while I'm out. I can't wait to see you all tomorrow.